What do you know about the 7 wonders of the world? Can you name them all? Most people only think of the Egyptian pyramids, and they're not always sure if they belong on this mysterious list. And the others, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the Colossus of Rhodes, the Mausoleum in Halicarnassus. Sounds familiar, but what were they? Now for the best part, almost all of them have disappeared. Some of them are not even a stone left. Others may not have existed at all. It was a list of the best structures of their time, compiled by ancient travelers. But how did they choose what to include? Was it a tribute to grandeur, political propaganda, or a hint at the lost knowledge of ancient civilizations? Where does history end and myth begin? Why were these buildings included in the legendary list and others not? And were they really as grandiose as they were described? Greetings, my dear friends. Wrap yourself in a blanket, relax, and let your imagination be transported to the world of ancient wonders. Today, in our lecture, we will uncover the secrets of the 7 wonders of the world. The greatest creations that once amazed with their magnitude and mystery. We will talk about how this legendary list came about and why these particular buildings have entered history. You will learn about the ancient pyramids of Egypt, the mysterious hanging gardens, the magnificent temple of Artemis, the statue of Zeus, the Mausoleum in Halicarnassus, the Colossus of Rhodes, and the Lighthouse of Alexandria. You will learn the secrets behind their myths, how they were created, and why almost all of them have disappeared, leaving behind only legends. We will also discuss how these wonders reflected the values and aspirations of ancient civilizations, and why even today, their legacy continues to inspire and fascinate the minds of millions. Get ready for a journey that will make you look at history from a new perspective. Welcome to a world where the past meets myth, and every stone holds an ancient secret. How this list came to be. Long ago, long before the advent of modern tourist guides, there was a ranking of sites compiled by ancient travelers, philosophers, and historians. This list, known as the 7 wonders of the world, was a reflection of what people of antiquity admired most. The grandiose achievements of architecture, engineering, and art. But who decided that these 7 structures are worthy of being called miracles? Why didn't the Great Wall of China or Stonehenge make the list? And did all these wonders really exist? The idea of wonders of the world was born in ancient Greece. Unlike us, the ancient Greeks did not seek to compile a list of the greatest or oldest buildings in the world. They chose those structures that struck their imagination during their travels. The Greeks were experienced navigators, traders, and explorers. They traveled around the Mediterranean, visited Egypt, Babylon, Asia Minor, and in each of these places they found incredible buildings that could not leave them indifferent. One of the first to systematize the description of great buildings was Herodotus, the father of history. He visited Egypt, saw the pyramids, and heard stories about Babylon. However, his records of the wonders of the world have not survived. Later, around 225 BC, Philo of Byzantium wrote a treatise on the 7 wonders of the world, where he listed the most impressive structures of his time. Later, Strabo, Pliny the Elder, and Antipater of Sidon wrote about these wonders, and their descriptions helped us visualize what these legendary structures looked like. The ancient Greeks considered the number 7 to be sacred. It is found in many religious and mythological systems. The 7 days of the week, the 7 planets of the ancient world, the 7 sages of ancient Greece. 7 was believed to be the number of harmony and completeness. This is how the list of 7 wonders was formed, which included the Pyramid of Cheops, Egypt, the greatest of wonders, the only one that has survived to this day. Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a mysterious structure that may never have existed. Statue of Zeus in Olympia, Greece, a huge golden statue of the supreme god that was destroyed in a fire. Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, Asia Minor, a grand sanctuary destroyed by barbarians. Mausoleum in Halicarnassus, Asia Minor, a majestic tomb that gave its name to all the mausoleums. Colossus of Rhodes, Greece, a giant bronze statue that collapsed after an earthquake. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, Egypt, a marvel of engineering, lighting the way for ships. This list was not exhaustive. Many incredible structures were simply not known to the ancient Greeks. For example, the Great Wall of China or the Temple of Angkor Wat did not make the list because they were far outside the Hellenistic world. In addition, the Greeks admired not only the engineering complexity, but also the aesthetic beauty of the structures. For example, the Egyptian pyramids became a symbol of eternity, while the Colossus of Rhodes, a huge bronze statue, epitomized power and strength. Other structures like Stonehenge may have seemed too primitive, and the cave cities of Cappadocia not monumental enough. Unfortunately, of the 7 wonders, only the Pyramid of Cheops has survived. The others were either destroyed by natural disasters or dismantled by people. However, archaeologists continue to find evidence of their existence. In Ephesus, the remains of the foundations of the Temple of Artemis can still be seen. In Halicarnassus, the ruins of a mausoleum that inspired many subsequent tombs remain. In Alexandria, fragments of a lighthouse have been discovered resting at the bottom of the sea, but the Gardens of Semiramis are the most mysterious building on the list. Archaeologists have never found any evidence of their existence. Perhaps it is just a poetic legend, or a confusion with gardens that existed in another city. If you think about it, of the 7 miracles, most of them have been destroyed. Should they be considered miracles if they have not stood the test of time? But perhaps the main miracle is not the structures themselves, but the fact that after thousands of years, they continue to excite the minds of people, inspire artists, historians, and travelers. Now let's take a closer look at each of these structures. What did they look like? How were they built? And what happened to them? The mystery of the Egyptian pyramids, a miracle that has survived the ages. When Napoleon Bonaparte led his army into Egypt in 1798, a striking picture opened before the eyes of the French. Majestic pyramids rising above the desert. Legend has it that looking at them, Napoleon said, 40 centuries looked down upon you from the height of these pyramids. He understood. In front of him were not just stone hulks, but structures that had survived thousands of years and had seen the birth and fall of civilizations. The pyramids of Giza are the only one of the 7 wonders of the world to survive to this day. The main one, the Pyramid of Cheops, once reached 146.6 meters, making it the tallest structure on Earth for 3,800 years. Even today, having lost several meters to destruction, it remains one of the greatest architectural mysteries. But what makes the pyramids truly amazing? Their geometric precision is astounding. The base of the Pyramid of Cheops deviates from a perfect square by only a few centimeters, and its faces are oriented strictly to the sides of the world with incredible accuracy. Researchers believe that the builders had knowledge in mathematics, astronomy, and engineering, which seemed to be inaccessible to people of that time. When did the pyramids appear? It is believed that Egyptian pyramids began to be built during the Old Kingdom era, 27th to 22nd centuries BC. The first was the stepped pyramid of Giza, 27th century BC, and then craftsmen perfected the technology, creating smooth-walled pyramids such as the Great Pyramid of Cheops. But there are alternative versions. Some scientists and researchers point to the erosion of the pyramids and related structures, suggesting that they may be much older than the official dating. This hypothesis is based on traces of water erosion on the stone blocks, which could indicate their construction during the period when there were still frequent rains in these places. And this is much earlier than the traditional dating. Some believe that the Egyptians had already found the pyramids when they came to the Nile Valley and only used them for their needs. This hypothesis is controversial, but periodically pops up in discussions about the origin of these structures. What were the pyramids built for? Why did the ancient Egyptians put so much effort, time, and resources into creating these giant stone structures? The official version says they are tombs of the pharaohs, but there are many other hypotheses, from astronomical observatories to repositories of ancient knowledge. The official viewpoint of Egyptologists states that the pyramids were built as tombs for the rulers of Egypt. Ancient Egyptians believed that after death, the pharaoh does not just die, but goes to the other world, where he continues his existence as a god. The pyramid fulfilled several functions at once. First, it protected the body of the pharaoh. It was believed that the preservation of the mummy was necessary for eternal life, so the sarcophagus was hidden deep in the bowels of the pyramid. Secondly, it served as a ritual guide to the afterlife. The tip of the pyramid as if directed to the sky, symbolizing the ascent of the soul of the ruler. Thirdly, the pyramid was a depository of riches. Inside the pyramid were left the objects that could be needed by the pharaoh after death: gold, statues, weapons, amulets, ritual texts. However, here is a mystery. No mummies or treasures have been found in the Cheops pyramid itself. This begs the question, were all pyramids really used as tombs, or did they have another purpose? Some scientists have noticed that the arrangement of the pyramids in Giza is similar to the stars of Orion's belt. In Egyptian mythology, this constellation was associated with the god Osiris, the ruler of the afterlife. Besides, pyramids are oriented on the sides of the world with incredible accuracy. Probably, it allowed Egyptians to carry out astronomical observations. Some tunnels of the pyramids are aligned to important stars. For example, a shaft in the Pyramid of Cheops points toward Al-Nitak, the brightest star in Orion's belt. Perhaps the pyramids did not just serve as tombs, but also helped the priest to follow the movement of celestial bodies and calculate important dates for rituals. There is a version that pyramids could generate or store energy. Electromagnetic anomalies were found inside the Pyramid of Cheops. In particular, in the so-called royal chamber, there is an amplification of waves of a certain frequency. In addition, no traces of torches or soot have been found. How were the tunnels and rooms inside the pyramids illuminated? Some believe that the ancient Egyptians used unknown lighting technologies. The pyramidal shape is also known to have strange properties. There is a belief that it can slow food spoilage, keep blades sharp, and even affect water. Of course, these are just hypotheses. However, the mystery remains. Why did the Egyptians choose this particular shape for their majestic structures? In addition to their spiritual and mystical aspects, the pyramids could also serve as symbols of the pharaoh's power. They were the tallest structures in the world for thousands of years, inspiring awe and reverence in their subjects. Their construction required enormous resources, showing the power of the state. They can be seen from dozens of kilometers away, like eternal monuments to the ruling dynasty. Were they burial sites, Or was their main purpose to demonstrate Egypt's power? There are versions that pyramids could be not only burial vaults, but also storages of secret knowledge. In ancient texts, it is said that pyramids could hide the information about world order, mathematics, and astronomy. Some researchers believe that priests used pyramids for initiations and sacral rituals. But among the many Egyptian pyramids, 3 great structures on the Giza Plateau stand apart. These monuments amaze with their size, precision of construction, and the secrets hidden in their walls. The Pyramid of Cheops, the Pyramid of Chephren, and the Pyramid of Mykerinos, 3 giants that even after thousands of years cause admiration and many questions. The Pyramid of Cheops is a wonder of the world that has survived millennia, and perhaps the most mysterious of all. Its height at the time of completion was 146.6 meters, making it the tallest structure on Earth until the Middle Ages. Even today, after the loss of its cladding and top, it remains a grandiose monument of antiquity. The base of the pyramid is almost a perfect square with a side of 230 meters, and its total volume exceeds 2.5 million cubic meters of stone. But it's not just the size that's mind-boggling. Once its entire surface was covered with dazzling white limestone slabs polished to a mirror-like luster. In the light of the sun, the pyramid shone like a giant beacon in the desert. At the very top, there was a pyramidion, a smooth stone tip presumably covered with gold. Its purpose remains a mystery. Was it just a decorative detail, or did it have sacred and astronomical significance? The internal structure of the Pyramid of Cheops is no less amazing. Unlike later Egyptian pyramids, its corridors and chambers seem to be designed with some special precision. The entrance to it is not at the base, but above, at a height of 15 meters. Further, a narrow corridor leads to the so-called royal chamber, which is lined with massive granite slabs delivered from Aswan, hundreds of kilometers away. Inside, only an empty sarcophagus was found. No traces of burial, no wall paintings, no inscriptions explaining its purpose. Perhaps the tomb was looted in ancient times, or perhaps its purpose was different from what we are used to thinking. Next to it rises the Pyramid of Chephren. It is slightly lower, 143.5 meters, but it seems higher due to the fact that it stands on a higher plateau. Its main feature is the preserved remnants of the facing at the top, giving an idea of how the pyramids looked like in their original form. But the Pyramid of Mykerin is strikingly different from its predecessors. Its height is only 66 meters, which makes it the most modest among the 3 Great Pyramids of Giza. However, it is unique. Its lower part is faced not with limestone, but with massive slabs of red granite. In the 12th century, Sultan Al-Aziz Uthman tried to destroy it, but after 8 months of work, his men could only punch a hole in one side. Destruction proved more difficult than construction. Interestingly, the Pyramid of Cheops was also subjected to attempts to open it. In the 9th century, the Caliph Al-Ma'mun ordered to break a hole in it, hoping to find treasure. Workers spent weeks chiseling the stone, using vinegar and fire, until they heard a rumbling sound, a sign of a hidden cavity. They were only a few meters wrong, but still made their way inside. Expecting untold riches, they found only emptiness and dust. To avoid embarrassment, the Caliph's advisor secretly put a pot of gold coins there and declared the find as proof of the successful search. The later Egyptian pyramids are noticeably inferior to the Great Pyramids of Giza. Already in the Middle Kingdom, the Egyptians began to build pyramids of raw brick and rubble, because of which they collapsed much faster. By the 18th dynasty, the Egyptians abandoned pyramids altogether in favor of rock tombs, as in the Valley of the Kings. But why did construction change? Some scholars believe that the Egyptians lost the technology that allowed them to build monumental pyramids. Others believe that economic reasons forced them to look for cheaper and faster ways to build. There is also a hypothesis that the pyramids of Giza were built using special knowledge and methods that were later forgotten. There are other mysteries. Why do the 3 pyramids of Giza correspond so precisely with the location of the stars of Orion's belt? Was it just a coincidence or knowledge lost over time? But the main question remains the same. How were they built? But if the pyramids are so mysterious, how were they built? This is where we face a new mystery. Imagine millions of huge stone blocks, each weighing several tons, perfectly matched to each other. How did the ancient Egyptians manage such construction without modern technology? Let's look at the most popular official versions. How the pyramids were built. The construction of the Great Pyramid of Cheops began with the selection of an ideal site. Ancient Egyptians did not choose the Giza Plateau by chance. Its hard limestone foundation provided a reliable support for the gigantic structure. The surface was carefully leveled, leaving only a small elevation in the center, which became the heart of the future pyramid. Then architects with incredible accuracy marked the base. The difference between sides of a pyramid makes not more than 4 centimeters, and difference in height of corners, only 2 centimeters. Even with modern technology, such precision requires enormous effort. The materials were quarried in different places. The main building stone, limestone, was taken from local quarries. Snow-white limestone from the eastern bank of the Nile, which was delivered by boat, was used for facing. The heaviest blocks, granite blocks for interior decoration, were brought from Aswan, located 900 kilometers away. They were floated down the river and then dragged to the construction site. Who built the pyramids? For a long time, there was a version that they were built by slaves, but research has disproved this myth. Around pyramids, archaeologists have found remains of settlements where workers lived, traces of bakeries, warehouses, tools. These people were not captives, but professional builders who worked on a rotational basis. Many were artisans, creating tools, doing logistics, calculations, not just hard physical labor. Researchers consider that in building of Pyramid of Cheops simultaneously participated 20 to 30,000 people, and for 20 years changed not one generation of masters. How did the Egyptians lift multi-ton stones to such a height? There are several hypotheses. The most common one is a system of inclined ramps. Stone blocks were transported on sandy roads that were gradually lengthened, raising them higher and higher. There were also spiral ramps around the pyramid. Archaeological finds, traces of such constructions speak in favor of this theory. Another option is to use a system of levers and counterweights. Ancient craftsmen could use wooden structures to help lift stones to the next level. This method saved workers' energy and sped up construction. A separate mystery is the facing of the pyramid. Snow-white limestone was processed with astonishing accuracy. Gaps between slabs did not exceed a millimeter. Some researchers believe that the facing was first installed, and then the surface was thoroughly polished, achieving a mirror shine. But there are other hypotheses. One of the most unusual ones says that the pyramids were not built from separate stones, but cast blocks right on the spot. French chemist Joseph Davidovits suggested that the ancient Egyptians knew the secret of geopolymer concrete. They could mix crushed limestone with water, sand, and additives, and then pour the mixture into wooden molds where it hardened into stone. This theory explains why some blocks have a strange structure that looks like man-made material. If this hypothesis is true, many mysteries of the pyramids acquire a logical explanation. Why do the stones fit so tightly to each other? Perhaps they were simply poured into molds and not laid by hand. How was it possible to erect the pyramid so quickly? If workers cast the blocks directly on the site, it could reduce the construction a few times. However, the hypothesis of Davidowitz has opponents. The main argument of skeptics is the absence of references to such a method in ancient texts. All known images of pyramid construction show people dragging blocks on sledges, not working with mortars and molds. Besides, the limestone of pyramids has a natural structure similar to natural stone, not artificial material. Now, let us for a moment imagine ourselves in the shoes of an ancient builder. We are given simple copper chisels and told, work this multi-ton granite block. How fast can we do it? Is it even possible to trim stone by hand with such tools? Try taking a piece of hard stone and an ordinary chisel to the cottage. How long would it take you just to chisel off a small piece? And if you need to work it perfectly flat, now imagine that there are hundreds of thousands of such blocks. Laying them with millimeter accuracy is a tremendous amount of work. Modern builders with advanced technology cannot accurately reproduce Egyptian methods. We can build skyscrapers, but we don't know how the pyramids were built. Why didn't people rediscover these methods thousands of years later? Because even if the official versions are true, it doesn't explain the main point. How did the Egyptians achieve such incredible precision without sophisticated tools? The pyramids are not just monuments of ancient architecture. They are a true wonder of the world. Their construction remains a mystery to which there is no exact answer. Perhaps one day scientists will be able to reveal this secret. But for now, the pyramids continue to puzzle researchers and cause admiration in everyone who looks at them. Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The Giza Pyramid Complex are the only one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that have survived to this day. The silent giants, standing guard over the desert for more than 4,500 years, allow us not only to touch the antiquity, but also to make sure that some legends turn out to be the very real reality. But what if I told you that we are now traveling into a completely different story? What if our journey is not through labyrinths of stone, but through labyrinths of human memory and fantasy? We are entering the territory of legends and legends, stories that have been passed down by word of mouth for centuries. And the first on our list will be the most mysterious and controversial of all the wonders of the world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. So imagine that the hot wind of the Mesopotamian plains is caressing your face, and the air is filled with the fragrance of thousands of unseen flowers. You are standing in front of a huge hill, completely covered with dense greenery, flowing waterfalls and gardens rising above the ground, as if floating in the air. This is how ancient writers describe the gardens built in faraway Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar II for his beloved wife Amitis. Wait, you say, why are the gardens named after Semiramis? And this is where the first mystery of our story begins. Semiramis was a legendary Assyrian queen who lived long before Nebuchadnezzar. She became the embodiment of power, beauty and wisdom for ancient peoples. But here is what is surprising. Despite the fact that the famous gardens are associated with her name, historians and chroniclers assure that the wonder of the world was built by a completely different person and at a different time. One of the first mentions of hanging gardens is found in the ancient Greek historian Berossus, who lived in the 3rd century BC. He wrote that the gardens were built by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar around the 6th century BC. The king wanted to comfort his wife Amytis, who missed the green mountains and blooming forests of her homeland, Media. For her, grandiose terraces with gardens, artificial hills with dense vegetation, graceful cascades of waterfalls which fed the most complex irrigation systems were created. But here's the problem. None of the Babylonian chronicles of that time that we know of contain any mention of such gardens. Strange, isn't it? After all, the Babylonians were excellent scribes and recorded every significant detail of the city's life. Maybe there were gardens, but they were not as grandiose as the Greeks described them. You and I are transported to the 19th century as the age of archaeological discovery begins. Scientists, armed only with old texts and legends, travel to the hot lands of modern-day Iraq in search of the long-lost Babylon and its famous gardens. In 1899, German archaeologist Robert Koldewey began excavating the ancient city. He indeed discovered the majestic walls and palaces of Babylon, the huge Ishtar Gate, wide roads, and amazing infrastructure. It seemed that one more step and the gardens would be found. However, despite years of searching, Koldewey failed to find any trace of the Hanging Gardens. Only one structure found in the northeast of Nebuchadnezzar's palace was identified by the archaeologist as a possible foundation for a garden because it had unusual vaulted rooms that could have served for irrigation. However, later studies have cast doubt on this hypothesis. Some scholars have suggested that the gardens could have been located not in Babylon, but in Nineveh, the ancient capital of Assyria, and were built by a completely different ruler, King Sennacherib. And indeed, during the excavations of Nineveh, complex systems of canals and aqueducts were found that perfectly fit the description of the gardens. This discovery sparked a new wave of debate among historians and archaeologists. Maybe the Greeks simply confused Babylon with Nineveh. After all, distances in the ancient world were enormous, and information often reached writers in the form of myths and exaggerations. There is another version. Perhaps the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis never existed in the form of a specific construction. What if it was a collective image of the Garden of Eden, a symbol of luxury and prosperity, which so captivated the imagination of ancient peoples that it gradually turned into a legend? However, there are those who believe that the gardens existed but were completely destroyed by the great earthquakes and wars that plagued the region. Imagine huge terraces supported by stone columns, flowering shrubs, climbing plants that cascade from one terrace to the next, an elaborate irrigation system using the Euphrates River, which continuously pumped water upwards, creating a paradise in the middle of the desert. This engineering marvel could well have become a reality. And here you and I stand before a question to which scientists still do not have an unequivocal answer. Are the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis a reality that became a myth, or a myth that was so beautiful that we decided to believe in its reality? Statue of Zeus the Olympian in Greece. Leaving the mysterious Hanging Gardens, our journey now lies in a land made famous by gods and heroes. We are going to ancient Greece, to Olympia, the place where people first competed in strength and agility to earn the favor of the gods. It was here that one of the greatest wonders of the ancient world, the statue of Zeus Olympius, was located. My dear friends, let us travel back in time to the great hall of a majestic temple, filled with the aroma of incense and the quiet whispers of admiring visitors. The semi-darkness is lit only by timid flashes of fire coming from torches, and in the center, towering above everyone, sits he, Zeus, the Lord of gods and men. His huge figure, covered with gold and ivory, sparkles even in the dim light. It was said that Zeus's gaze was stern, but at the same time merciful, capable of penetrating into the very soul of everyone who dared to meet his eyes. The statue was created by the legendary sculptor Phidias around 435 BC. Its height was almost 13 meters. Such a grandiose creation that even sitting on the throne, Zeus almost touched the ceiling of the temple with his head. Contemporaries wrote that if the god had decided to stand up, he would have destroyed the roof and walls of his sanctuary. Phidias worked on the statue for several years, using a unique technique known as chryselephantine, which means gold and ivory in Greek. The statue was based on a wooden core, over which ivory plates representing Zeus's skin and gold sheets conveying his clothing and jewelry were skillfully attached. Zeus sat on a throne decorated with scenes from myths and legends, and in his hands he held the symbols of his divine power. In his right hand, a statuette of the goddess of victory Nike, and in his left, a massive scepter crowned with an eagle, a symbol of heavenly dominance. An interesting fact is that the statue constantly required care, as the humid climate of Olympia caused damage to the ivory. The priests regularly oiled it to keep the material intact and shiny. It was because of this that the statue exuded a pleasant aroma, which added to its mystery and appeal. For the Greeks, this statue was not just a work of art, but a symbol of unity and national greatness. People from all over the ancient world came to Olympia to see Zeus and receive his blessing before participating in the Olympic Games. Even the famous orator and philosopher Dionysius Chrysostomus wrote that he who has not seen this statue has not seen true beauty. However, my dear friends, the history of the statue turned out to be dramatic. During the rule of Rome, the great emperor Caligula, known for his madness and despotism, ordered the statue to be transported to Rome to replace its face with his own. According to legend, when the soldiers approached the temple, they heard a loud and terrifying laughter coming from the statue itself and scattered in fear. This legend symbolized the overwhelming strength and independence of the Greek spirit. With the advent of a new era and Christianity, the fate of the statue changed. Emperor Theodosius in the 4th century A.D. banned pagan cults. The temple was closed and the statue was moved to Constantinople. There it was located in the Palace of Lausus and was part of a magnificent collection of ancient relics. But in the 5th century A.D., the statue's trace was lost completely. According to historical sources, it perished in a huge fire in the Palace of Lausa. Some researchers believe that the remains of the statue were dismantled into pieces and the gold and ivory melted down or sold. My dear friends, today there is not a single fragment left of the statue. Only descriptions of ancient authors and images on ancient coins and medals allow us to imagine its greatness. And yet the question of the statue's fate is still a mystery. Some believe that somewhere deep underground, its fragments may be preserved, waiting to be discovered. Despite its disappearance, the statue of Zeus of Olympia has left a deep trace in history. Its image inspired Renaissance artists, and the idea of creating such a monumental creation still amazes the imagination. Perhaps it is in this mystery that the greatest power of history lies, its ability to inspire us to dream and seek, even thousands of years after the last traces have disappeared into time. And who knows, maybe right now, in one of the secluded corners of the earth, there is a discovery waiting to be made that will bring back to us at least some of the lost splendor of the statue of Zeus. Temple of Artemis. My dear friends, as we leave ancient Olympia and its mysterious statue of Zeus, we continue our journey through time and age. Now our way lies to the marvelous city of Ephesus. nestled on the shores of the warm Aegean Sea. It was here, among the fragrant olive groves and green hills of Asia Minor, that the Temple of Artemis, one of the most beautiful and greatest wonders of the ancient world, stood. Imagine a structure so beautiful that poets compared it to the light of the sun and the starry sky. It was not just a temple, but a true symbol of beauty, wealth, and veneration of the goddess Artemis, the patroness of nature, animals, and fertility. The first sanctuary in honor of Artemis appeared in Ephesus a long time ago, long before the Greeks set foot on this land. Even then, people believed that the wooden statue of the goddess was sent from heaven. Ancient myths say that the first worshippers of the goddess were the Amazons, mythical warrior women who brought the cult of Artemis to Ephesus. The goddess worshipped here differed significantly from the traditional Greek image of the huntress. The Ephesian Artemis personified Mother Nature and was depicted as a woman with many breasts, symbolizing fertility and inexhaustible vitality. In the 6th century BC, the Temple of Artemis reached its grandeur thanks to the generosity of the legendary King Croesus of Lydia. He invested enormous wealth in the construction of the sanctuary to glorify the goddess and his city. The architects erected a temple of extraordinary size, more than 100 meters long and about 50 meters wide. The temple was surrounded by 127 columns, almost 20 meters high, skillfully decorated with bas-reliefs depicting the legendary battles of the Amazons and the exploits of heroes. The splendor of the building was emphasized by sculptures and paintings by the greatest masters of Greece, including the famous Praxiteles and Apelles. However, even the most majestic creations of human hands are vulnerable to the blows of fate. In 356 BC, a tragedy occurred when a man named Herostratus set fire to a temple in order to glorify his name. Although the authorities of Ephesus forbade mentioning the name of the perpetrator on pain of death, the name of Herostratus has come down to us as a symbol of vanity and cruelty. The temple was rebuilt soon after its destruction, and the new sanctuary became even more beautiful than before. It attracted pilgrims and travelers from all over the Mediterranean and became the cultural and economic center of the region. Around the temple, trade flourished, political agreements were made, and wealth and valuables were stored. However, time and new eras were not merciful to the sanctuary. In 262 AD, the Goths destroyed and looted the temple, and with the spread of Christianity, it finally fell into disrepair. The stone blocks and columns were used to build new structures, and the magnificent sculptures and treasures disappeared without a trace. Today, only one lonely column remains of the Temple of Artemis, erected by archaeologists from surviving fragments. But even now, looking at these ruins, we can feel the breath of history. Imagine how songs and prayers once sounded here, and sacred rituals united people in a common veneration of the goddess. Archaeological excavations in the 19th and 20th centuries have brought back to the world priceless artifacts now stored in museums in London, Vienna, and Ephesus. These finds give us the opportunity to touch ancient civilization, feel the connection of generations, and make sure that real miracles do not disappear without a trace. They continue to live in the memory, myths, and hearts of people. My dear friends, even though the temple itself has long since disappeared from the face of the earth, its spirit remains immortal, awakening admiration and awe even after millennia. Colossus of Rhodes. Our next stop is the island of Rhodes, located in the southeastern Aegean Sea, at the crossroads of the sea routes between Europe, Asia, and Africa. In the semi-darkness of history, the greatest monuments rose to the sky, destined to survive the ages. But time plays its own game. Sometimes constructions conceived for centuries collapse after only decades, while what was created only for a moment lives forever in the memory of generations. It is not without reason that they say, the higher you rise, the more painful it is to fall. A striking example of this paradox is the fate of the Colossus of Rhodes, one of the greatest statues of the ancient world and one of the 7 wonders of the world. The story of Colossus is the story of the rise of human genius and the subsequent fall, leaving behind not only ruins, but also an eternal symbol that has survived centuries in legend and inspiration. It all began in the late 4th century BC, when the city of Rhodes found itself at the center of a major conflict, the Wars of the Diadochi, who vied for power after the death of Alexander the Great. In 305 BC, Demetrius Poliorcetes, son of one of Alexander's great generals, laid siege to Rhodes in an attempt to gain control of the strategically important island. The city heroically held its defenses for a year, and Demetrius's forces eventually retreated, leaving behind numerous siege weapons and military equipment. The townspeople, filled with gratitude to the gods for their rescue, decided to commemorate the event by building a grand statue in honor of Helios, the sun god and patron of Rhodes. The funds for the statue came from the sale of captured weapons and siege machines left behind by Demetrius's retreating army. Thus, the weapons of war were symbolically transformed into a monument to peace and light. The Colossus was entrusted to the talented sculptor Heras of Lindos, a student of the famous Lysippus. The statue was originally planned to be about 18 meters high, but inspired by their victory, the people of Rhodes wished to double the size of the statue to an incredible 36 meters for the time. This required an enormous amount of additional resources and materials, forcing Heras to borrow money to complete the construction. The work lasted 12 years. Heras used a technique that was advanced for its time, casting the statue piece by piece and gradually building the earth mounds for its construction. The bronze figure grew like a living thing, towering over the city and harbor, impressing all who saw the process of its creation. Around 280 BC, the construction was completed. Standing on a huge marble pedestal, the Colossus depicts Helios with a radiant crown on his head, facing the sea and welcoming ships entering the harbor. This majestic statue became a symbol of freedom, pride, and prosperity of Rhodes, reflecting the fortitude and resilience of its inhabitants. However, the statue did not stand for long. In 226 BC, a powerful earthquake shook the island. The earth shook and the Colossus collapsed, breaking at the knees under the weight of its weight. For the inhabitants of Rhodes, this was a catastrophe and a warning from the gods. After the earthquake, the Rhodesians sent a delegation to the famous Oracle of Delphi to find out if the statue could be restored. The oracle's answer was strict. The Colossus could not be rebuilt. Otherwise, the island would incur the wrath of the gods. Even the offer of the Egyptian king Ptolemy III to finance the reconstruction of the monument was rejected. Thus, the majestic statue, once the pride and the symbol of Rhodes, lay on the ground as a giant wreck for more than 8 centuries. The ruins of Colossus became a popular attraction of the ancient world. People from all over the Mediterranean came to see the huge bronze remains, amazed by their size and grandeur even in their ruined state. The ancient historian Pliny the Elder reported that few people could grasp with both hands even one finger of the Colossus's hand. So enormous was its size. The monument finally disappeared only in the 7th century AD, when Rhodes was conquered by the Arabs. The bronze parts were melted down and taken away as ingots on 900 camels, putting an end to the physical existence of the Colossus. However, its memory lived on. The image of the great statue has inspired artists, poets, and architects for centuries. It served as a prototype for the famous Statue of Liberty in New York, and the word colossal has become a noun describing anything unusually large and grandiose. The Colossus of Rhodes remains an eternal reminder of the fragility and brevity of human achievements, but also of the power of ideas and images that can endure through the ages. Although its bronze fragments have long since disappeared, the majestic image of the sun god Helios greeting the dawn over Rhodes continues to live in our imagination, proving that true greatness does not disappear without a trace. Mausoleum at Halicarnassus. Moving on from the grandeur of the temple of Artemis in Ephesus. My dear friends, we move on to the next amazing wonder of the ancient world. Our journey takes us to Halicarnassus, an ancient city located on the picturesque coast of the Aegean Sea, on the site of modern Bodrum in Turkey. It was here that the majestic mausoleum stood, a marvel built in honor of King Mausolus and his wife Artemisia. This monument was not just a tomb, but a symbol of eternal love, devotion, and ambition of the rulers who sought to leave an unforgettable mark on history. King Mausolus ruled over Caria in the 4th century BC. His lands were formerly part of the Persian Empire, but in fact, he ruled independently, skillfully balancing the powerful powers of the time. Mausolus was a wise politician and talented strategist who greatly strengthened and expanded his state. He moved the capital of Caria to Halicarnassus and launched a grandiose construction there. Fortifications, magnificent palaces, and of course, the monumental mausoleum were built. But Mausolus was not only known for his political achievements. His union with his wife and sister Artemisia was unique. Such marriages between relatives were common in antiquity. But the union of Mausolus and Artemisia was special. It united them not only familially, but also politically. Artemisia was not just a wife of the king. She was his equal ally, an intelligent and educated woman deeply involved in the affairs of state. Together, they created a legacy that was admired by their contemporaries and descendants. When Mausolus died in 353 BC, Artemisia experienced deep sorrow. To express her love and respect for her husband's memory, she decided to build a grand mausoleum. Legends say that her grief was so deep that she even drank the ashes of Mausolus mixed with wine to always have a piece of her loved one with her. This may be only a legend, but it reflects the depth of her feelings and devotion. To build the mausoleum, Artemisia invited the best architects and craftsmen of her time, including the famous Satyrus and Pythias, as well as outstanding sculptors, Scopas, Bryaxides, Laochar, and Timothy. Their joint efforts created a masterpiece that harmoniously combined elements of Greek, Carian, and Persian architecture. Artemisia personally supervised every stage of construction, striving to make sure that the monument would worthily immortalize her husband's memory. The mausoleum was striking in its grandiosity and elegance at the same time. About 45 meters high, it stood on a massive rectangular base of white marble. This stepped platform symbolized strength and grandeur, and above it rose 36 graceful columns in the Ionic style, creating an impression of lightness and airiness. Between the columns there were magnificent bas-reliefs depicting mythological scenes and feats glorifying the king. Particularly impressive was the stepped pyramidal roof, consisting of 24 layers converging to the top, where a grand statue of Mausolus stood, driving a chariot with 4 horses. This sculpture symbolized the triumph, majesty, and immortality of the ruler, as if embarking on an eternal journey. The sculptural design of the mausoleum deserves special admiration. 4 great sculptors created scenes of battles of the Amazons, sea battles, as well as images of gods and heroes glorifying the life and deeds of the royal couple. The central composition was the life-size statues of Mausoleum and Artemisia, which crowned the top of the structure. Although the mausoleum itself has not survived to this day, many of its elements were discovered during archaeological excavations in the 19th century. The surviving fragments, including relief panels and architectural details, are now preserved in the British Museum in London and allow us to understand how magnificent this creation was. These findings confirm that the mausoleum not only symbolized love and memory, but also represented a unique fusion of cultures, reflecting the rich heritage of Halicarnassus as a crossroads of Eastern and Western civilizations. The mausoleum became not just a tomb, but a monument to human genius and an inspiration for generations of architects and artists to come. Thus, my dear friends, the mausoleum at Halicarnassus remains an eternal reminder of the love, devotion, and ambition of ancient rulers who sought to immortalize their name in history through art and beauty. Alexandria, Lighthouse. Leaving Rhodes and its majestic Colossus, my dear friends, we move on to experience another outstanding wonder of the ancient world, the Lighthouse of Alexandria. Our journey takes us to the mysterious and prosperous city of Alexandria, located on the Mediterranean coast in the delta of the Great Nile. This city, founded by Alexander the Great, became the crossroads of cultures, sciences, and trade routes of antiquity. It was here, on the small island of Pharos, connected to the city by a long artificial causeway, that the engineering marvel whose fame resounded throughout the Mediterranean rose. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was built during the reign of King Ptolemy, the second Philadelphus, around 280 BC, and took its name from the island of Pharos, becoming a nickname for all subsequent lighthouses. The architect of this amazing structure was the famous Sostratus of Cnidus. His cunning is legendary. It is said that he secretly carved his name on the stone, covering it with a layer of plaster with an official inscription in honor of King Ptolemy. He believed that time would inevitably erase the top layer and reveal to the world the true creator of this grandiose project. The Lighthouse of Alexandria was truly astonishing. It was about 120 meters high, an unthinkable achievement for the time, second only to the great Egyptian pyramids. The structure was divided into 3 impressive levels, each with a specific shape and purpose. The lower level was square and unusually massive, built of huge stone blocks that created unrivaled stability. Inside were living quarters for guards, lighthouse workers, and warehouses where firewood, oil, and food were stored. The middle level had an octagonal shape and served not only as a support, but also as a true work of art. It was decorated with graceful columns, beautiful statues of Greek and Egyptian gods, and majestic bas-reliefs glorifying the rulers of Alexandria. This part of the lighthouse reflected the power and luxury of Hellenistic Egypt, creating a sense of grandeur and prosperity. The upper tier was cylindrical and served the main function of a lighthouse, to illuminate the sea route. At the very top was a special chamber in which a bright fire burned continuously, amplified by huge metal mirrors that reflected the light. There are stories that the light of the lighthouse was so powerful that it was visible from a distance of up to 50 kilometers. Imagine how, in the dark of night, this bright beam of light broke through the darkness saving hundreds of sailors from dangerous rocks and pointing the way to a safe harbor. An interesting fact is that the Lighthouse of Alexandria did not just light the way for ships. It also served as an important landmark and symbol of Alexandria's cultural and scientific superiority. The city at the time was home to the greatest library of antiquity and a center of attraction for scholars, philosophers, and explorers from all over the ancient world. The lighthouse has become an integral part of the image of this prominent city, but alas, nothing lasts forever under the moon. Over the long centuries of its existence, the lighthouse has repeatedly suffered from devastating earthquakes, especially the earthquake of the 14th century, after which the lighthouse was seriously damaged and gradually fell into disrepair. By the 15th century, the once majestic structure was completely destroyed, and its stones were used to build the citadel of Qaitbay, which still stands on the very spot where the famous lighthouse once shone. However, the memory of this miracle has not disappeared in the centuries. Modern archaeologists exploring the bottom of the harbour of Alexandria found numerous debris, massive stone blocks, statues and fragments of columns, testifying to the former splendour of the structure. These findings have once again revealed to the world the image of the lighthouse, helped to understand its complex structure, and the extraordinary level of engineering thought of the ancient architects. Thus, the Lighthouse of Alexandria has remained a symbol of the human quest for light, knowledge, and safety. Its history reminds us of man's irresistible desire to conquer the forces of nature, to make his way through darkness and storms, and to leave his mark on eternity. Conclusion. Ancient authors created a list of 7 wonders of the world, which included the largest and most impressive structures of the ancient era: the Great Pyramid of Cheops, the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis, the statue of Zeus in Olympia, the Temple of Artemis in Ephesus, the Mausoleum in Halicarnassus, the Colossus of Rhodes, and the Lighthouse of Alexandria. The historical context is first of all appealing. Around the 3rd century BC, the Mediterranean and neighboring regions were experiencing a significant cultural and economic boom, coinciding with the expansion of the Hellenistic states that emerged after the collapse of Alexander the Great's empire. Several powerful kingdoms competed for influence and status. Their rulers encouraged large-scale construction projects in an effort to demonstrate power and attract the best craftsmen and scholars to their cities. This partly explains why the Colossus of Rhodes, the Temple of Artemis, the Mausoleum at Halicarnassus, and the Lighthouse of Alexandria emerged between the 4th and 2nd centuries BC, almost synchronously. However, it remains a mystery why such outstanding structures appeared at this time and in such a short period of time. The coincidence seems unusual because each miracle required colossal expenditures, complex engineering calculations, and a high level of craft skills. The next significant point is the disappearance of technologies that made it possible to build such objects. The ancient Greeks, Egyptians, Babylonians, and other peoples had a very advanced knowledge of mechanics, mathematics, architecture, and hydraulic engineering. Historical evidence points to the use of sophisticated building machines, precise geometric calculations, and unique stone or metal working techniques. These skills were lost due to successive wars, political cataclysms, and the decline of major educational and cultural centers, such as Alexandria, where numerous manuscripts and technological descriptions were kept. Fires, raids, and the destruction of the pagan heritage meant that the following eras inherited almost none of the engineering solutions of antiquity. As a result, most of the technologies that made it possible to build the 7 wonders had to be rebuilt, and some of these discoveries were made only in the New Age or even in the modern era. When considering the 7 wonders, it also raises the question of why some sites have survived to this day, or at least their ruins are easily recognizable, while others have disappeared almost without a trace. Such varying degrees of preservation are a reminder of the fragility and impermanence of cultural heritage. History is selective. Those that have been lucky enough to escape destruction are passed down to posterity as important symbols, while those that have been touched by the elements or wars remain only in the records of ancient writers and in the scraps of legends. People tend to romanticize or speculate about those wonders they cannot see for themselves. The Pyramid of Cheops, which has survived almost unchanged, evokes a special respect and interest in the engineering genius of the ancient Egyptians, while the Hanging Gardens, on the contrary, symbolize a lost opportunity that exists only in legends. At the same time, each of the marvelous structures can be seen as a symbol of a certain idea or value that the ancients wanted to immortalize. The Pyramid of Cheops represents eternity and the mystery of the afterlife, where the king sought to preserve his identity for centuries to come. The Hanging Gardens of Semiramis are said to have been created as a gift from a loving soul, becoming a symbol of love and an ideal oasis. The statue of Zeus at Olympia emphasized the power of the divine and the authority of ancient Greek cults. The Temple of Artemis at Ephesus showed the importance of the female cult and fertility. The Mausoleum in Halicarnassus kept the memory of the beloved spouse and demonstrated the power and luxury of the rulers. The Colossus of Rhodes glorified freedom and victory, and the Lighthouse of Alexandria illuminated the path of knowledge and a rational view of the world. All 7 wonders can be interpreted as a coded set of the main components of the ancient way of life, where the eternal thirst for immortality and the desire for beauty were combined with engineering courage. It is no accident, and the number of wonders of the world, 7. For the ancients, this number was considered a sacred number of the god Apollo and symbolized completeness, harmony, and perfection. Centuries have passed, and the expression, the 7 wonders of the world, has not passed into oblivion. For descendants, it has become a symbol of something unimaginably great and beautiful. We can see in these 7 ancient creations of the highest aspirations of civilization a kind of hint that human genius is capable of immortal creations when it is driven by great ideas. After all, in the end, it is not stone,